Hi, welcome back. So we are at the last outline before the case study in this section, and that is to discuss when to use a property. We have seen so far the meaning of property and some good examples, but I have decided now to show you this in a more practical way with a real example when property can be really at handy. Imagine if I would have a class, and let's call this class just example class, whatever it is. And from here, you could define a function, dunder, and just call here a self dot xyz variable. This could be equal to anything. And then define another function. Let's call it action function. Just return action on the self dot this xyz variable multiplied by 2. Now, if I would have to go out and instantiate an object, let's say this is an object. The actual fact now, the difference here, if I would go to object dot, now I have this two axes, and I want you also to look at the sample as given in Visual Studio Code. This is an attribute called XYZ variable. And then you have this, the method or the action can be taken. In either way, I could access to this variable here, access to the action method. But in this case, of course, I have to use the brackets because this is a method. Now, technically in Python, the data and properties and method are all considered to be attributes of a class. And the fact that a method is callable does not distinguish it from other type of attributes. Methods are just callable attributes. As you can see, this way of calling action function. But property are just customizable attributes that can help us to make a decision in some way. So if I would have here to go and create a property of any name. So one more time, if I go to objects here, now I have these three axes. This is the variable. This is the method, but this is, you can see this sample next to prop attribute. This is a property, give me ability to enjoy control. So basically I could actually make some manipulation on the action that I need to take on this variable. Let's take a very, very realistic example. So what I have prepared here, a very simple and short script that show you something very interesting. Let's assume that I want to open a website. Instead of every time I would create an object to open or access the website, that can happen, but every time I have to make a new request, right? But how about if I instantiating an object? The first time the request occur, it's fine. And then whatever this value is going to be retrieved, it will be encapsulated as a local variable for that object. So every time I need to access the content of that object or the data, I don't have to make the request one more time. So in other words, like caching the value. So in this example, I'm creating a class. I call it a web page. Then I have this dunder method. Let's say if you want to instantiate from web page, you need to provide me with the URL. And then I'm taking a local variable called self URL and I'm assigning what URL you pass to me. Next, I'm using this a private variable called content. Hold no that. Instead of assigning directly whatever I was intending to do with this value of content, I use a property to assign the value to that content. So here I'm just making a check. If actually there are no content or the value of self content is 9, I'm going to take this action. And what's the action? Just this is a printing line. I'm going to assign to the self content using this library called web browser, which is I import from another modules, which has this function called open, and I'm passing the URL of the object that instantiated from. Now let's put this in action and make that practical example. Imagine here I'm creating an object called web page, whatever, and I'm instantiating from the class, passing, of course, the link or the URL. Now I'm just calling a timer here to show you the difference. So this is just a counter, so to speak. I have called here a variable in this object. I call it content1. So imagine this content1 will encapsulate data or information that I want to retrieve or read. So I reach out to my object that I instantiated the first time, and I'm using this content here. So now content is used as a property. In fact, I could have created all this in a different way. So self-content can be at the first time read directly. I mean, this line could have been here. But what happened here, I'm just calling this as a property. Now, this particular line is saying whatever if there are no non-information, go and read this particular page and store it in content1. So what I'm going to do now, just to show you the difference, I will print what is the time took to open this page. Great. Then I'm just making a separation line. I took sleep for 4 seconds. And then I am timing 0 again, my current time, just to calculate what happened. Then once again, imagine I want to reach again to the content of that page from the same object that I instantiated. Now, in this time, it makes a huge difference. Now, when I again assign to the new variable content to whatever I retrieved from web page.content, watch carefully now, it will not need anymore to go and reload the page because this property concealed already and stored the value. So when the property go and I call content here in the second line, he go inside, is asking if not self.content, but self.content now has a value because we call it the first time. So in any way, he will go and retrieve the information again. And also I print one more line to confirm you that the information of content 1 and content 2 are identical. This is a very, very silk and simple trick to show you how useful that idea can be. In fact, let me run this one. Now, when he go and retrieve the new page, I mean, this is the first time I instantiate, right? He go and he call in content and there was nothing inside self-content. That's why he went and he retrieved a new page. So he print this line and then he make loading to the page. That's why it opened. Just now we saw. And then I'm showing you the time. So how long time that took me to open that page? Say it's almost 0.23. Great. Now in the second time, I call a new variable called content to reach again to the web page.content, which carefully he will go to the content one more time. And this time is asking, is self-content has no value? No, it has. That's why in the second call, it did not print this because he just went and retrieved directly what was stored. And look at the time took to retrieve that, nothing, 0. And it will always be 0 because this data is already there. I don't have to retrieve it and call it again. And to confirm that whatever in content 1 and content 2 are equal, the result is yes. So this is a very practical example to show you the powerful use of a property. We have reached finally to the case study, which is gonna recap every information with a practical example. I will see you then.